Hi everyone, my name is Adam Heverin and I am an instructor in the Exercise Science Department at Franklin College. Today I'd like to talk to you about a couple things. First thing we're going to talk about is how to increase your daily physical activity. That's step one. And some of you might be thinking, well, what's the difference between physical activity and exercise? I hear about both. Well, physical activity is anything that increases your heart rate beyond resting. Exercise is pre-planned, structured physical activity to really focus on a very specific goal within physical fitness. So the best place to start is physical activity. Trying to get yourself to increase your energy expenditure beyond this.
Going for the head.
See? I mean, why didn't he go for the head? It gets me every time. And now they're all going to disappear? Don't worry though, they come back. A common misconception is that physical activity has to take a very specific form. It does not. Increasing your physical activity is as simple as move more. Any activity that gets your heart rate above resting can count as physical activity. A good goal to start with is achieving 150 minutes per week of activity beyond resting. Activities that challenge your muscles beyond normal daily activities have many benefits as well. Start small and build more minutes of movement into your routine each day. So now that we've talked a little bit about some ways when you could increase your physical activity, some of you may be thinking, well, I don't have a lot of space, or I'm at home a lot, how can I increase my physical activity without lots of fancy equipment? Or right now when I'm making this video, it is February and there's ice on the ground, so I can't go outside. Luckily, we can increase our physical activity just by using some random things that we have around the house and not even going outside at all. So I've gathered some things from around the house, just an old piece of wood, a pillow, my trusty backpack that's made a previous appearance in another video, a cooler, and some cans of soup, a jar of peanut butter, and some almonds that are never very far away from me. So I'm going to show you how to do some simple exercises that are fundamental human movements that are going to increase your physical activity with just things from around the house. So the first movement I'm going to talk to you about is one that may seem overly simple, but it is a very important movement that we have to execute many times throughout the day, and all humans should be efficient at this movement. It's walking. And so we can use walking as the base of the pyramid for our human movement. When we become really efficient at walking, we can graduate to other more advanced movement patterns. So how do we use walking to increase our physical activity? Well, the current recommendations for number of steps per day is 10,000. And that doesn't matter if it's February and there's ice on the ground outside or if it's a nice spring day. We still need to try and target getting in 10,000 steps a day, which seems like a lot. But if you take some steps towards increasing your physical activity appropriately, getting in a little bit more walking is a little easier than you might think. Anytime you are standing and moving counts towards more walking and will get you closer to 10,000 steps per day. As you feel comfortable being on your feet more, you can slowly increase your walking speed, which will also increase your heart rate. Reminding yourself to stand throughout the day and move more often will increase your step count and help you build towards 150 minutes of physical activity each week. So now that you've increased the amount of walking you're doing per day, hopefully getting close to that 10,000 steps per day mark, work up to it. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to vary the walking pattern just a little bit by adding something to our hands or our back. So carrying is another fundamental movement pattern that we should try to work into our day as much as possible. A lot of you probably do it without even thinking about it. Well, we can, if you're doing more walking, you can add some carrying into your walking with some really simple things that we have around the house. I have the cooler here and the backpack that I can add load to with some soup cans or with books or with whatever you want to do. So Let's go ahead and take a look at some different carrying patterns that you can add to your walking. Sitting down and standing up, or what some might refer to as a squat pattern, is a fundamental human movement pattern that most humans have down, right? It's just something we do every day. We just sit down, we stand up, and we do it without thinking. It can be a pattern that we can train though, one that we can make ourselves more efficient at, and the more efficient we are at this fundamental movement pattern, the better we're going to feel throughout the day, and the more confident we are going to be as movers in general. So you can start off real easy just by using a couch in your living room or a chair or something like that in your office. You just sit down and you stand up. Now, if it's difficult for you, depending on the height of what you're doing, you can do a couple things. You can use a pillow to increase the height, so that decreases the intensity of the movement. You can use something to help you with your arm, just like that. And the better you get at the movement, the more you can do without taking rest. Let's go ahead and look at a couple different ways that we can use this pattern, and we can switch it up to make it a little bit more challenging as we learn how to do the movement better. Picking things up and putting things down. Putting things down and picking things up. It's another fundamental human movement pattern that we should all be efficient at. It's slightly different from the sitting down and standing up, the squat pattern, because it uses more of the muscles around the hips instead of the muscles in the front of the legs. So let's take a look at it. So I have my cooler here, and I want to pick it up. What I'm going to do is I'm first going to shift my hips backwards. So the difference here is I'm not going to let my knees go as much forward as I would in the squat pattern. I'm going to shift my hips back. I'm going to keep my back straight by keeping the muscles in my back nice and tight. And I'm going to bend my knees. I'm going to go down. I'm going to pull it a little close, and I'm going to pick up. I'm going to reverse the pattern to set it back down. Just like that. Now, just like with the sitting down and standing up, we can modify the setup of this to make it easier or more difficult. If I wanted to make it more difficult, I would just add more soup cans to my cooler here. If I wanted to make it a little easier, I would not use something as heavy. I could use something to raise the implement off the ground just a little bit to bring it closer to me, to make it easier to grab. If I wanted to make it harder, I could stand on top of something where the implement is below my feet. That's a more advanced pattern. So let's go ahead and take a look at some variations of picking things up and putting things down. Pulling. It's really important when you want to open a door. Pulling is a fundamental movement pattern that uses the musculature in your upper back. It can increase strength in and around the upper body, which is important for daily tasks and to help us feel like we have better posture throughout the day. So executing a rowing or a pulling pattern is pretty simple. We get ourselves into a posture where we have the middle of our body or our core tightened. We're going to shift our hips back, take a small step forward, find something sturdy to put our hand on, and we're going to grab something and we're going to pull it towards us. You don't have to feel like you have to turn or anything like that. There are some patterns like that, but we're not going to discuss those. They're a little bit more advanced. One of the easiest implements you can use to grab onto is the cooler. You could put things inside of it to increase the load. You could also use a backpack or a duffel bag. Right? So if you want to start small, you could also use like a soup can, just and not something as bulky as the cooler. So let's go ahead and look at some variations on pulling patterns. So now that you have a better understanding of how to increase your physical activity and some basic movement patterns to work on, here are some ideas for workouts that you can use to start implementing exercise in your daily routine.